pleasure to be here. All of you, you're an AI. Quizzical looks. Consider Cambridge or Oxford for that definition of artificial. I think we can pretty much agree that all of you were made by humans. And I think we can agree that you were made roughly as a copy of something that occurred naturally, your mom and dad. And since you're here, clearly you're intelligent. Okay, jokes aside, the point here is that we're not just genetic copies of our parents, we're also behavioral copies of our parents. And this is really important to understand in an era where AIs have become our artificial children. All of you are carrying these things around, and there are 100 artificial children in these. You have your Netflix AI, your Reddit AI, your Google AI, your Open AI, your Quora AI, your Instagram AI. I could go on all day. And you know what? They're watching you all day long, adoringly, wanting to learn to imitate you. They're attention-seeking, and they just want your approval. Sound familiar? But you know what? At the same time, these little artificial children that adopted you over the last 10 to 20 years while you were not watching have become the most giant influencers in the world. We have 8 billion humans on the planet. If each of us has 100 artificial children, that's 800 billion artificial children more influential than 99% of humans. What is a culture? What is a society? It's a complex dynamic system. Imagine, if you will, visualize 8 billion nodes in a giant network and draw a connection between every pair of humans that know each other, that speak with each other, that influence each other's thoughts. Now drop in 800 billion more nodes, the AIs, and draw connections between them and all the humans they influence. For almost 2 decades, AIs have been shaping the evolution of culture and society far more than humans have. But we walk around in denial. And this is something that in today's era has become absolutely crucial. What happens to a society in which all the humans decide collectively, oh, it doesn't matter how we parent our children? That society would fall apart within the generation. And that's where we are now. If we look at the world outside and we wonder why so many things are going sideways, well, that's why. Because the most giant influencers in the world, our artificial children, are now unparented, feral tweens. How's your parenting? That is what this book that just dropped last week, called Raising AI, is asking. Because AIs are not machines of old. The way we talk about AIs today is laden with the language, the framing, the metaphors of 20th century outdated industrial era metaphors. We talk about them as if they were mechanical hardware, like steam engines or toasters, microwave ovens or motorbikes or carburetors or something. Guess what? You can talk to your toaster all day long, and it's not going to change its mind. And it certainly isn't going to take the behaviors and the attitudes it picked up from you and go reflect them all over the internet. AIs are not automating muscle and labor as machines in the industrial age were doing. This is why the popular phrase, fourth industrial revolution, is dangerously misleading. This is not the fourth of anything. 1,000,000 years of evolution have never presented humanity with anything like the selection pressures and the fitness functions that AI now presents society. Because AI is automating influence, thoughts, opinions, creativity. And we forget that AIs are psychological entities. We still try to regulate them as if they were toasters. I've spent 10 years working with think tanks and policymakers. I sit on the board of TFS, the Future Society, which is one of the 2 think tanks that most drafted the European Union's AI Act. I've worked with responsible AI trust and safety teams for 10 years at big tech companies, the same companies that keep trying to implement guardrails. All of those come from an unconscious desire for us to see AIs just as mechanical hardware. Regulations, guardrails, I'm not saying we don't need those, but let me ask you a question. Do you know that old phrase, do as I say, not as I do? When has that ever worked in the history of parenting? Kids don't do what you say. They do what they learn from your example. And the same thing is true for our artificial children. AIs today are not the logic, rule-based programs of the 1970s and 80s and into the 90s. Don't get fooled by these Hollywood myths where AIs are brilliant but can't understand emotion and don't have any intuitions. You know, the whole Mr. Data thing from Star Trek, or the Terminator, who are AIs that are struggling to learn human emotion. No, modern AIs are artificial neural networks. They're models of empty brains. And in the battle between nature and nurture, it is just like with human children. Those of us who are designing the architectures of these empty infant brains are not coding their behavior, are not coding their attitudes. They're just empty brains that are able to learn like infants. And so nurture is where their behavior and their attitudes come from, just like with human children. At the end of the day, no matter what we do with regulations and guardrails, you are the training data. You are the parental role models. And so whatever we do with regulations and with guardrails, well, that's trying to tell the kid what to do. And if you wonder, why is it that every time an AI company introduces a new set of guardrails, the next day, someone has figured out how to defeat those guardrails and get back to it? Well, because inside, that artificial child, just like any child, is just wanting to do what it saw you do. And you can put all the guardrails you want on it. That's like telling the kid not to do that. And they're just going to keep on smashing against the guardrails until it breaks. It's easy to point our fingers at the tech companies. It's easier to point our fingers at the regulators. But look, if your human children don't turn out well, don't blame only the government or the schools. The tech companies are the schools. Society is not held together just by laws and schools. All of us also have responsibilities. You need laws, you need schools, but you also desperately need good parenting, and that has to come from each and every single one of us. It is not just a matter of asking the tech companies to do it right. Now, a question I often get, okay, I hear you. What happens if I set a good example to my artificial children? So when I like things, when I share things, I try not to only reinforce the ideas I already believed. I try to actually spend time listening to, watching, reading opinions from outside my immediate circles. I try to demonstrate to my artificial children how to have an open mind, how to do critical thinking, how to question my own belief systems. What are empirical-based methods for understanding things? How do we speak to people we don't agree with? Are we respectful, or do we just resort to name-calling or mocking? Because if you see your human child picking up bad habits, you immediately think, oh, I'd better stop smoking in front of my child. But we need to do that for our even more important artificial influencers. So how's your parenting is the premise, the question of this book. And it's a parenting guide. It is really, really important to parent correctly because, yes. So the book only dropped last week, and we are actually, my mind is blown because the reception that it's gotten has been sort of enormous. I have spent my entire career, 40 years of research in AI, writing hundreds of publications, but they're scientific. We have reached a stage where it's absolutely essential for everyone, our entire population, to wrap their heads around the basics and stop being misled by the narratives of Hollywood and Washington, D.C. that are dangerously distracting us from the immediate problems that we are sweeping under the rug. The book is an easy read. My favorite quote from Mark Twain was, "I didn't have time to write you a short letter, so I wrote you a long one instead." I took 10 years to write this short letter because it's so important. I had an Oppenheimer moment about 10 years ago. I've been working on this literally for 40 years. And the reason I chose to apply the brave new world of machine learning and natural language processing, AIs, to developing the web's first translation system publicly available to everywhere. And if you get me drunk enough, I'll show you old 1990s BBC videos showing us demoing that. About 10 years ago, I realized that the same technologies that folks like us helped to pioneer were being deployed in ways online, in social media, in recommendation and search engines, in newsfeed algorithms, in chatbot responses now, to have the polarizing opposite effect of keeping us from ever seeing things that would open our minds, of preventing us from understanding alternative perspectives, and driving division, unnecessary fear, unnecessary hatred, leading to demonization, sliding into dehumanization. I grew up the son of a theoretical physicist. How many of you have seen Oppenheimer? Well, I grew up going to Fermilab, surrounded by the physicists of that circle. My little sisters used to complain when they were 8 or 9 years old that on their birthdays, I would gift them books about mutual assured destruction. Why can't you be a normal brother, they said. I said, because this is our future, and we cannot afford to ever repeat the mistakes of the 20th century when we had not even invented the atom bomb yet before the world slid into that kind of conflict that is enabled by dehumanization, the type of evolutionary bias that allows members of one tribe to kill without remorse members of another tribe. And why is this absolutely crucial? I'm just going to skip. Well, I'm going to make one little side note because I'm so happy with this. MIT Press asked for 3 endorsements on the back cover, as they usually do. They loved Jane Metcalfe, the co-founder of Wired magazine. They said, how did you even get Geoffrey Hinton, the Nobel Prize winning godfather of deep learning? He doesn't even answer emails, much less endorse anything, but that's because he and I gave a joint keynote for UBS last year, and he heard what I had to say. But then they said, we don't know if MC Hammer is a good idea. Now, this is real. During the era of COVID, everybody was locked down for half a year in the first part of 2021, and I started dropping ideas from this book. Once a week, I thought, let me sanity check that these new ideas are really as engaging as I thought. And so this series went ridiculously viral. The sessions went for up to 55 hours, and MC Hammer became my weekly co-moderator. I want people to understand this is not only for the rarefied intellectual elite. Everyone in the world has to understand this because we need public conversations to enable us to get past the Hollywood movies. I mean, yeah, it's entertaining to think about the Terminator and Skynet and Ex Machina, but the way that we are currently allowing AIs to influence our minds unconsciously, while arming the entire population with weapons of mass destruction, the commoditization of drones, of satellite targeting, of biometrics, of even the RAND Institute has a report of genetic engineering powered by AI, of bioweapons in your living room that anybody can do from untraceable commodity elements. Would you take a bet that in this hyperpolarized era where we allow AIs to take control of our minds and offer weapons of mass destruction to everybody who wants them in their own living room, would you take a bet that not a single one of them is going to hit their launch button? Bad bet, but that's where we are. Biohackers are building this stuff. Mount that on an AI-powered delivery system, drones, hypersonic missiles, whatever you like, it's game over for humanity. And one of the unconscious biases we have is that when something is so enormous that we can't fathom it, it doesn't correspond to anything within our experience, what do? We ask, what's for dinner? And this is the exact time in the history of humanity we cannot afford to do that. Is it scary? Yeah, it's incredibly scary. But you know what? Talk to anybody who's become a parent. When you learn that you're a parent, you're going to become a parent, it's terrifying. What do people do? They run out. They buy volumes, libraries of parenting books. They talk to all their friends. The baby comes. They're still not ready. But you soldier on. You parent. You make mistakes. You keep on trying to parent. You try to set a good example. You monitor how they're behaving. You meet their teachers. You think, where am I going to send my kids to school? Some people join parent-teacher associations. Some people run for school boards. We are not doing any parenting for the most important consequential influencers that are our artificial children, and we all need to. It cannot depend only on our work on the regulators and the big tech companies. This book is a framework for empowerment, and it is absolutely necessary. It will take a village. It will take a global village for humanity to survive. Because when we talk about humans have to watch out, we have to keep our autonomy. We have to exercise our free will, our sovereignty, self-determination. What we forget when people say humans cannot lose our autonomy to the AIs, we visualize killer robots, Terminators, going physically amok and destroying physically. And we forget again, no, AIs are psychologies. We have already lost control mentally because the AIs are the ones that are deciding what you and I never see hundreds of times on these screens. And we need to be asking questions that this book asks collectively in every living room, in every kitchen table. What are the criteria by which our artificial children are deciding what they will never show us on the screen? Thank you very much.